Hey everyone, and welcome to Back at the Ranch, Expedition Online's after show. My name is Jessica Martin from season 1, and here with me today we have Philip from Team Kelly. Welcome to the ranch.
Hey everybody. Well, didn't expect to be here, but bittersweet that I am.
We're so sad to see you sitting here right now. I personally love a good underdog story and wanted to see Team Kelly rise from the bottom. And not just that, like you are just such a likable person that everyone loved watching.
Well, thank you. That was it's interesting when you're in the game, you don't know what people's perceptions are when they're watching. And my goal was to try to play like a relatively honest game, at least in the beginning. And so I was trying to kind of take an honest approach and more like kind of human approach pretty early on. So, I didn't obviously didn't pan out, but it did get me to the rendezvous, which that was kind of the first or the second goal I had. The first goal was just don't get voted out day one.
And you achieved that goal, so that's a good one. I don't think you being eliminated has anything to do with you not playing like a good and human game. I think that's part of the reason they wanted to eliminate you, because you were doing that. But we'll get to that when we get to that episode. But we'll start right from the beginning. Day 0. What were your thoughts going into this? Did you want to be on Team Kelly versus Team Janet? What were your thoughts being dropped in the room with everyone? Just tell me.
So it was interesting. Going in, I really didn't necessarily care whose team I was on, and not because I don't like care about either one of them, but because I really liked both of them. And so I think there are two pretty different players. So I think like anyone who plays Janet has such like a motherly energy that it was like, oh my, that would be like great to be on Team Janet, great to talk with her. She was obviously on one of the more recent seasons. And so that was pretty cool. But then also like you have Kelly Wentworth, who's like I've watched in multiple different seasons, who's like a huge name in the Survivor world and someone who it's like, oh man, I can really learn from them. So I didn't really care either way, honestly. But it was really cool to hear them like say that Kelly like selected me. So that was like a fanboy moment, which was really fun.
Yeah, it'll be fun when everything airs and you can see them watching your videos and like battling it out for you guys. It's fun.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it'll be a fun surprise. So you get picked for Team Kelly. How did you feel about your party? Was there anyone you were upset wasn't there that went on Team Janet, or what were your thoughts?
Not really. I was just trying to keep an open mind because like again, I think in this game, what was interesting for me is that I was approaching it like on day 0, when you have conversations with people, you have for the most part, you don't know how people are going to react in any situation. You don't really know who your allies are going to be. You get some good feelings about some people. And I felt that I ended up with a decent amount of the people who I talked to. But again, it wasn't like, oh my God, yes, this is the exact team I wanted. And I think people who probably go into that being like, this is my team, we're doing it together, it's like probably not, they're probably not going to be around long, is my guess. So it was interesting because I didn't want to try to like make alliances or like, I just really wanted to spend the first day 0 and day 1 like getting to know people. And so like I took notes on everybody, one, just to like make sure I knew who everybody was, like put down some pieces of information, first impressions. So I remembered that going into day 1, day 2, and so on. But also, I was just, when else in your life are you put in a position with a bunch of other people who you, for the most part, probably don't have anything else in common with other than wanting to play this game. So for me, it was just like, let's get to know people right off the bat. Let's figure out if you can see what their strengths and weaknesses are. If you can start forming some type of relationship with them and kind of like unspoken bonds sort of early on, because again, you don't want to come across as too aggressive and start making deals right away. You can be upfront with people and be like, hey, I really like you. Like you have a great personality, but not to the point where you'd be making any sort of deals. So it was fun. And as I'm hearing myself talk over and over again right now, I was probably a little bit too talkative up front, which I think is it's part of my personality. And so, so I didn't come into it with that, like much of not a game plan, but not like I'm going to put on this persona of myself, because I think people probably would have seen right through that, honestly. So I just kind of went into it like, I'm not going to try to play a persona. I'm not going to downplay or upplay certain parts of my game or my personality. I'm just kind of going to go in there and be myself for the first couple of days and then kind of go from there, I guess.
That's the best way to do it. It takes too much energy to pretend to be someone else and to keep up with that. Playing as yourself is the best thing you can do.
I
Um,
appreciate that.
yeah, you did a good job. So we get to day one, and Team Kelly unfortunately loses the first challenge. How did you guys land on sending Jess home?
So this ended up being pretty difficult because there's really not much to go off of. So, and nobody wants to be the person to like bring up somebody else's name first, because then if you're the person who's like suddenly bringing people up, so there's a lot of like kind of awkward interactions of like, what are you thinking? What do you think? And so it wasn't really like a cohesive strategy at first. And then my whole goal in that was don't be the person to bring up somebody's name first. Whatever happens, just don't, maybe try to lead people in some direction, but whatever you do, don't be the person who's leading the charge. And so was in a group, a room with a couple of people, and what I had said was, is there anything that we can go off of that, again, we don't know people's personality, but is there any single thing that we can point to that would, could be used like as a reason to vote somebody out? And the only thing that we had is if someone had really bad internet, like nobody had that bad of internet, so it wasn't like an easy thing. But Jess was moving. And so from our perspective, what we said is if she's moving, she might not have access to everything for the games. If there's a scavenger hunt, we'd be out of luck. And so I think people were like, hey, that's the only thing we can go off of, that we don't think will piss anybody off, and we'll make sure it's not personal, because it's tough to make it. If you can make it personal that early, I feel like it's kind of weird. So that's just kind of how we all decided. And so it was a pretty simple decision from that point. But then also, I think she felt it was her, but then stayed in base camp the whole time. So she didn't try to talk to anybody or get in really on the strategy. And so we almost thought like, if she's not going to come and like plead her case or anything like that, then maybe it's the right choice.
If you don't try to strategize with anyone on the first vote, like you're pretty much writing your own ticket home.
Yeah, for sure.
So Jess goes day one. Day two, unfortunately, you guys had Troy drop out because he had some family stuff going on, which was a bummer. We were super excited to see him play. Were you guys surprised to hear he was leaving?
Definitely. And we were just, I mean, I think the first part was potentially like slight relief, because you're like, okay, maybe we're like, no one has to be sent home. Maybe we'll get an extra day. But then it was like immediately like, well, let's wait and obviously see like what's going on with his situation. And so it was more out of just like, we want to make sure he's okay. This guy we just met, who again, we had just gotten kind of basic level introductions to, we're getting excited to play with, is suddenly gone. And so, it kind of sucked, because it was immediately put us at a disadvantage from a numbers perspective. We had sent somebody home the night before. We were already down somebody if we won. And so our backs were kind of feeling against the wall a little bit just from a numbers perspective. So that it wasn't something that we all were like happy or really sad about, but more just like, we wish we could have gotten a chance to know him. We wish we could have gotten a chance to play with him longer and things like that. So it kind of just was a bummer at the end of the day.
Yeah, it was. So you guys still go to the challenge later, and Team Janet ends up losing, and they send Anthony home. And so that day is the first introduction of Serrated Peak. So Katie gets selected to go over by you guys, and then she chooses Bridget. What did you guys think was going on over there when those two went over?
Honestly, we were just like, Katie's probably telling some awesome stories, because we got just glimpses of Katie in day zero, of just, she was sitting in the airport eating salmon in Iceland. And we were just like, this woman has so many stories. She's so fun. And so like, we also wanted to keep her around, for two reasons. The first is just purely from a likability standpoint. We're like, I was like, I want to get to know her more. She's great. But also we thought that she could potentially have a target on her back, just because of the fact that she's like such a huge personality, and a lot of times those people can get targeted first. And so from our perspective, we're like, we should save her, because one, she's great to have around. We're really excited to have her come back. But two, if they were planning potentially on voting her, we thought she might have been the first vote, then it would throw a wrench in their system. And so any way that we could maybe throw some dysfunction their way was something that we definitely wanted to try to do.
Yeah, that's smart. I'm happy that you guys saved her. She was so much fun to have on.
Oh yeah.
So Bridget gets back. Does she spill to you guys what happened, or does she keep it secret?
She just spilled. So she just, I never really got a chance to get to know Bridget that well, but she kind of came back and just spilled everything that happened. She let us know that Jess was super unhappy with us that we voted her out because Jess was at Serrated Peaks. And so she said that Jess gave a half of a compass to, or an advantage because she didn't know what it was at the time. So just gave her an advantage to Katie, didn't really talk to me because she was pissed at me for voting her out. So there's clearly some bad blood there, which for me at that point, it's like, ooh, this game is real. Someone who we just voted out is there, and they're pissed at a bunch of us who we thought like, hey, we're making this decision. She'll probably understand. She'll be super bummed, won't be happy, but we didn't think it was a situation to get like mad at us. And so then it's like, oh man, people's feelings are really in this game. And so at that point, I think it was a little bit of a wake up call. Like, all right, the game's really starting now, and also coming back. We know advantages are now in play. Compasses are out there. So it's like suddenly the game went from like, hey, kumbaya, talk to everybody, send somebody here. All of a sudden, like, oh man, we're in the thick of this game, and it's just like day two.
Yeah, it's definitely a wake up call too when you find out that the people you're voting out are still around. Because that's just another thing you need to like keep in the back of your mind, like who might come back and might be pissed at me.
Yeah.
Were you guys surprised to hear that she was still around?
I don't think surprised. I think you're all anytime someone gets voted off until you know there's no like time for redemption or something like that. Nothing for me, like nothing was final. So I wasn't really surprised, but more it just like added another layer of complexity to the game.
This is the first time we've ever done this on Expedition. So it's a fun little twist for you guys.
Oh yeah.
And speaking of twists, we do the old party swap the next episode. So you end up on the old Team Janet party with Neil,
Yep.
with a bunch of guys in the minority. And unfortunately, Team Kelly is in the minority in every single party except for the newly added Wishkatine party.
Yep.
So how did you feel seeing how things shook out for your old team?
I mean, for me, it was, I think I landed on an extremely strong team. So first and foremost, I was excited that I was on a really strong team. And the goal was, hey, we have to win the challenges because if we don't, me and Neil don't have the numbers. We're probably going to be challenged right away. So that was my first thought. My second one, as you mentioned, kind of like looking around, it's like, hey, 2 out of 3 teams are at a disadvantage. So like they might start picking off Team Kelly pretty quickly, which at that point, I was almost hoping like we weren't really with Team Kelly for that long. So I'm like hoping that people aren't like Team Kelly, Team Janet. And I don't really think that was the case. And so I think I was a little optimistic when thinking that way. But at the end of the day, I was pretty happy with the team. I got, Carl on my team, who's just a wild card, and we got to talk a bunch. He was really fun to talk to. And then Mike, who was great, and Joshua, who I really liked at the time too. And so essentially we had a really strong team. And so, I was, again, surprised that it happened, but immediately we went together and it was, let's figure out what our strengths are, how we can win this challenge, and how we can come back here, shortly and just get to know each other as opposed to, have to stress. Because going back there, I did not want to have to stress because I knew I'd have to fight to stay in the game at that point.
Yeah, it's interesting your point about you guys weren't together that long as Team Janet and Team Kelly and thinking people would have that mindset. I was really surprised to see that they didn't, that Janet stuck to the party line so rigid. Because you're totally right. Like every other season that we've done a swap, the original parties have had more time to get to know each other. And this was so short that it was really surprising to see that.
Yeah, honestly. And too, like, I mean, even when we were with that group of 5 guys, we were like, listen, we're probably going to have a target collectively on our backs because 5 guys in a group, it's like, coming out of that. And especially, I think the perception is that we were a really strong team as well. And so I kind of thought that core group would stay together and try to hold the numbers and go from there. Didn't end up playing out that way, but I am really grateful for that time because we won the challenges that we were with together. So like each night after the challenges, we got to go back and just like hang out. And there wasn't too much strategy talk. It was a lot of, hey, we really like each other. We feel like we can trust each other. We all know we're good players in this game. So like we called each other the 5 Guys Alliance because that was just kind of funny. But it was like, I was trying to be clear, like, let's not make it known this is a 5 Guys Alliance. When we split next, let's try not to make that too widely known because at that point we didn't have the numbers where we could have been picked off in the game.
Yeah, so like you said, you guys won both of your challenges while you were together. The first time you win, Bill ends up going home. Did that surprise you at all that they targeted him?
It did, until I found out that he just did really poorly on the puzzle. And so that was, I mean, again, they had just met Bill and that was his reason, that they had a good reasoning, which is just like, hey, he didn't perform well. Sorry. And so from that perspective, again, at that point, when you just meet people, you don't really know them that well, and you're losing. If there's any easy choice because someone didn't do something, then you go with that because that's
Yeah.
unifying and it's not a difficult thing to do. And so that was, I think Bill probably knew he was going home. From our perspective, though, until we found that out later, I was a little bit surprised because I was also a little sad because I'm like, Bill is someone who I really like. We just had some good conversations with. He's someone who I wanted to work with in this game. And so I'm like, ah, shit, like a guy who I was working with in this game or potentially really could see myself working with is now gone.
Yeah, Bill's awesome. I wish he got to stay around longer. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
So the next vote ends up being a double crossroads. And this episode has a little bit of controversy and a lot of questions from some of the people who got sent to Serrated Peak. So this is the egg balancing challenge, which you kick ass in and you win for your party.
Yeah.
And you also get the choice of sending someone to Serrated Peak. Now, you picked Mariana, and this stirred up a lot of chaos, which I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not.
Maybe. So essentially, like I was thinking the two people at the time who I was probably closest with, that I thought I was closest with on the other teams, were Mariana and Cupini. I had really good conversations with both of them on day one. I really liked both of them. And so I looked at it and I was like, okay, I have to pick one of them, right? At least from my point of view. And my team didn't say anything yet. And so I was thinking, okay, if I send Mariana, she's going to be safe. If I send Cupini, he's going to be safe. But what I thought about is Bambi wasn't there at that challenge. And so I looked at between the two of them, I'm like, I think if Cupini stays, he should be able to convince his team that like we should vote out Bambi. She's not here for the challenge. She's not here for deliberation. I thought that was going to be an easy, he stays in the game, Mariana stays in the game, best case scenario. So that was my point of view. But again, the decision almost was made for me a little bit because someone on my team just goes, how about Mariana? While everyone was together. And because she had just gotten her team Kelly gear, and someone said like, hey, Mariana. And so for me, someone on my team said that. I was leaning that way anyway. So I was like, okay, Mariana. And so I don't know what the responses were after that, but I can assume my gut, and even in my confession that day, I was like, I hope Cupini's safe. But if not, if he gets sent home or is in danger, like I feel a little bit bad about that. But at the same time, I was hoping that he was able to convince his team. So I won't be surprised if I see in his confessional, like it's Phil's fault I got sent home or something like that. That might be a thing that happens. And I guess I have to wait, but unless you're willing to share some of that controversy.
So yeah, no, it's interesting hearing your perspective on it because that does make sense. Like you would think they would automatically just vote out the person that wasn't there. But so when Capini and Bridget got sent to Serrated Peak after they were voted out, they were all riled up. Capini was thinking he should have sent Bridget to Serrated Peak because then she'd be safe since she was the only Team Kelly member left. And then Mariana and Capini could battle it out against the other two Team Janet members. So he was really frazzled and thinking, Phil's not Team Kelly strong. He doesn't care. I won't give you all the details because you can see it when it airs, but it made it sound like there maybe was some like tension between you guys. So I've just been wondering the whole time, like, did something happen at Team Kelly that we didn't see?
No, like I had a really good relationship with him. And again, when you have 15, 20 seconds to make a decision and you see two of your allies, you try to find a situation where, in my first gut was like, how can I potentially save both these people right now? Because I can't. So what was I thinking the best outcome? If Mariana didn't send her, she was most likely going home because she didn't have the numbers. If I didn't do Cupini, I thought like you should be able to convince people. And again, I didn't know the dynamics over there, but I think they ended up probably voting him out because he was a strong player. But I just thought like, hey, if someone isn't there for the challenge, for me, it's like they're an easy throw in,
Yeah.
And so I have heard that he was pretty upset with me and said some not great things about me, which is unfortunate, because you'll see every interaction that I had with him was great. And, I even thought after the game, I was probably going to reach out and just kind of explain it and apologize. But like, I've just kind of heard some of the things that he said, and, pretty aggressive. And, definitely not happy to hear that. It kind of got back to me that he inferred that like I only was talking to guys, was against girls, and there's like some weird stuff. It's some telephone, so I'm not going to go fully down that route. But yeah, I guess Coutinho is kind of really not painting a good picture of me as not just like a player, it's kind of like a person to Olivia, which I think construed her picture of me moving throughout the game. And then like when I talked to her at one point, she honestly like, I've said some not nice things about you. But she's like, but I was like, I've never talked to you once. Like, what happened? And she was like, oh, Capini was saying like pretty bad stuff about you. And then you beat me in the egg challenge. And so she's like, I kind of just like combination, a couple of those things, I just kind of went off on you. And I was like, well, I feel better that you went off on me, like not knowing me. It would have stung if like I had gotten to know you and then you went off on me. And for me, that's kind of what happened with Capini. And I understand why he was upset, but well, I'm excited to see how that unfolded. And hopefully he didn't take it too personally, but it seems like he did.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know he said that stuff about you. I knew he was a little salty. I think at the end of the day, he was upset that he got voted out. And he also thought of you as a very big threat. And in his mind, I feel like his strategy to knock a target down is to maybe talk poorly about them to change people's thoughts.
Yeah. The thing is, I'm fine with people's reactions during the game and things like that. And, I'm not going to hold anything that people did personally. Like I did some stuff I'm not like looking back, like maybe came across as maybe I like was too emotional after things and said some things, not to him, but I understand after you get voted out, like you're pretty heated because you wanted to win this game. And it was still pretty early on. And I think he thought of himself as going far, but I think everyone did see him as a threat. The kid knows Survivor more than any person I've ever met in my life. He was also good at the challenges. He's a good athlete. So he was smart. He's, young. He's like, he had a lot going for him where I think he was going to be a threat in this game no matter what.
Like you said, it's a game and people's emotions are heightened and they might say things that they don't mean. But just know that all of us mods loved watching you and we only have nice things to say about you.
No, and like I even look back at this game and I was like, even like you overanalyze it once you get out and you think like, did it run some people the wrong way? And there's certain things that you did, but overall, like I felt happy with how I felt pretty happy and proud of how I played the game. And, hopefully there's some good content out there and I'm really excited to watch all of it.
Yeah, it's going to be super fun to watch back. So following Bridget and Capini getting sent to Serrated Peak, were you guys just wondering when this battle back was going to be and what the setup of it was going to be like?
Yeah, we really didn't know because all of a sudden we were like, we've like the 5 guys were back and like we have a bunch of the numbers. At that point, we're like, we know it's probably not going to last that long. So at that point, we were trying to like, let's have each other's back. Let's try to protect each other. Let's not go back and say we like form some alliance. And we didn't officially form alliance. I'll say that. I think probably Josh and Mike were more hesitant than me, Carl, and Neil were, because I think they were thinking longer term that they really wanted to keep their options open. They didn't want to make it known and were worried that if the word got out that we were all forming alliance. So I think their hesitation stopped us from forming like a true alliance where it was kind of like a, hey, good luck, let's try to look out for each other type of thing.
So next episode, 5 guys are ready to go at it again and win another challenge. But surprise, we're splitting up and battling against the Serrated Peak people. So many twists in one day.
Yes, that was a lot.
And so you ended up staying on the team Janet, the red team, Kagwatan.
Yeah. So we won that night. Thanks to David. David realized if you flip the ice cube over on its curved side, it just slides a lot easier. Where some people had the flat side and it was like slow, like really slow. But it was a huge relief to win there because again, I was even more against the numbers with a bunch of people who I didn't really know that well. Like I knew Mike in that team and Bambi had come back in that team. And so I didn't really know where I stood with Bambi because we had been together on day 1 and then she was gone. So like, I didn't really know her that well. I knew Mike pretty well, but I knew he was a gamer. And so I couldn't tell, like, and he also had previous relationships. So I was like, I do not have the numbers in this group. So I know I'd be sent home if we don't win. So, I ended up going last, which was nerve wracking. And I didn't do great, but did good enough to win. And so I think that was nice because then we went back day one with that new party and we're able to just try to get to know each other a little bit more. And I had never talked to David, I never talked to Haley. And then it was Bambi, Mike, and myself. So hadn't really talked to Bambi much. And so me and Bambi immediately were kind of like, we're on the outsides here. And I was hoping like maybe Mike will be with us. And I still didn't really have a good sense of where he was.
So the secluded party ends up getting second place, so they can send one person back in, and that person will replace whoever was voted out at Chukanady. So they end up losing. They send Neil home, who I know was in your core alliance, which is too bad. And then they replace him with Jess. Who did you think that they were going to send back? Were you surprised?
I was, honestly. But it also was like, man, Jess is probably a threat if she was able to convince a bunch of people that she should be back in the game after being voted out day one. And maybe the story was I didn't even get a chance, the team screwed me over, something along those lines. But I thought it was going to be Bill. I'd be really curious to kind of see how that dynamic went down. But I was expecting Bill, maybe Kupini. But at that point, I was like, I don't know if I want Kupini because he's probably not with me. And it would probably be an uphill battle if he might have a vendetta against me. So I was hoping Bill was coming back because I was like, he's someone I can work with. Maybe there's a shot there. But a part of me was happy to see her back in the game because I'm like, she does deserve another shot because she got voted out. She was moving and really didn't get a chance to play the game. So
Jess gets back in and takes Neil's spot. You guys end up losing the next challenge. What was going through your head? Obviously, you knew you were a target. Did you think you could swing it on anyone else?
I thought I could get Mike and Bambi to vote either for Haley or David. But it didn't, it just like wasn't really working out because they were absolutely convinced that somebody wasn't going home because we weren't allowed to play any advantages. We weren't allowed to. So it was like, and we had seen previous seasons and hey, when this happened in previous seasons, nobody went home. They got sent to the other team. And so my thing was like, hey, maybe we put some votes on Katie because I was like, I don't really know what her strategy is. I don't really know where her alliances are. She's good at this game, but she's dangerous in this game because she doesn't really have the alliances. And at that point, I didn't really know Katie that well. So I didn't really have because this is my first time being like attached with her on this team. So like, I was like, hey, if we can get people to vote Katie out just because she's a wild card, great. But I thought they were going to be voting for me. Like at the end of the day. So my only person I could think of to vote for was going to be Katie. Because I wanted to work with everybody else and I didn't know Katie enough to the point yet where I would feel comfortable working with her. And it was clear David and Haley were a pair. So it was like, if I can get one of them, they're going to vote together. Mike and Bambi, I feel close. I felt closer with Bambi then because we were on the outs. Mike was definitely the swing. So I have no idea, and he pretty much told me, and Bambi even told me, I was like, Bambi, are people voting for me? And she was like, yeah, they are. She absolutely cracked under the pressure, but in more of a kind way to like give me a heads up. And so going into that deliberation, I knew that I was on the chopping block. And so I went in there and what Mike said was like, I don't think you're going home. Would you be comfortable being sent home? And I was like, hell no. Like, I don't like, no, like, would you, I'm like, would you risk putting yourself on the line when there's a good chance you could be coming back, but there's a good chance that you're sent somewhere else. And so I just was not comfortable with that for obvious reasons. And so my pitch, and I feel like this pitch was kind of not aggressive, but was just like, guys, I'm good at the challenges. And so if there is a chance that I get sent to another team, who do you want sent to another team? Someone who's going to go to another team and beat you in the challenges, or someone who, maybe isn't as good as the challenges, doesn't really have all the strategy, because I want to work with all of you. I want to let that be known because I did. I was like, I want to work with you all, but I also am, if I come back or get sent to another team, like I'm good at these challenges. So like, do you want to go against me? Was my pitch. So I thought that was a pretty good pitch. Didn't work out. It was pretty much, I didn't blame anyone for voting for me, by the way. The only person who didn't vote for me was Katie, ironically enough. And so I felt bad that I threw her name out there, and it took us the next day, and we can get into that to kind of get over that hump. But yeah, then I was sent off to Serrated Peaks.
Yeah, and it ended up working out for you. you got to give a disadvantage to
Mhm.
someone, and you chose David,
Yep.
which made sense. David is pulling a lot of strings, making a lot of big decisions.
Yep. And he was also, I could tell he was the one who orchestrated me. He, I think, was probably the one to definitely throw out my name first. It was David or Haley who did that. But David seemed to be the more vocal one at the time. Like I knew Bambi didn't lead the charge. I know Mike didn't lead the charge. I knew Katie didn't lead the charge. I think they were kind of like, hey, we're going to follow with what the majority is doing, which at that point makes sense for the game, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, hey, well, if this person is kind of going against me a little bit, then I'm going to try to flip the numbers on him the next time and get him out if it comes down to it, if he doesn't have a vote.
Yeah, it was a really smart move. So next challenge, Chukanady ends up losing. So David doesn't know about his missing vote quite yet.
Yeah.
Chukanady ends up sending Jess home. Were you surprised that she was the first vote?
No, again, it's like once you vote somebody off once, it's so easy to vote them out again, which I found
Yeah.
out pretty quickly.
Yes. So the next episode, this brings us to your second vote off. That's actually real this time.
Yep.
You
And
fought a good fight.
yeah, so I mean, I knew it was coming. I knew I was on the chopping block pretty quickly because I got in some rooms, and previous to that, Carl had talked to Mike at Serrated Peaks at some point. And Carl told Mike to relay to me that he still wanted to work with me. And I was like, sweet. So maybe I have Mike, maybe I have Carl, maybe I have Bambi, maybe I can sync back with Mariana. And I'm like trying to figure out these people who I could form these quick connections with because I'd been voted out once. I'd won technically the first, I'd won one of the first individual challenges, which was the like the egg one, which was technically not an individual one. I had just lost to either Joshua or David in like the one stacking one with the things. Like I finished like right after him. So like again, it's probably the worst place to position when you're just about the rendezvous to finish like second. And then I made it to the final three in the cup blowing one. So it's like I had one finished second and finished third. And so it's like, even if my alliances, I'm an easy target right now because people can say like, hey, he's done really well in these individual challenges. He hasn't won that, but he's been in the top couple. So he's an easy choice to vote out. And then David was there too. And so I knew at this point he didn't have a vote. And so I was like, okay, my saving grace here is that I can, and I was at one point in a room with, I think 6 people. And I was like, hey, there's 11 of us total. If us 5 vote David and he doesn't have a vote, we have the numbers to do that right now. And so I felt like that got some okay traction right away. I knew I didn't get everybody, but I started floating that idea around to some people. And so I felt confident. I'm like, okay, I feel like that's going to happen. I talked with David and he was like, hey man, I know you're throwing my name out there. I've heard it. And I was like, same goes to you. And you already had voted me out once. And I was like, yeah, I am. And I'm like, and it was interesting. We had a good conversation of like, is there a way we can work together? Because we both kind of saw each other potentially as a shield, as like, hey, we're both pretty good players in this game. I think we could, if we had started together, we definitely would be working together, but we've just been on the opposite sides. And so that was kind of a nice moment, honestly. And it was kind of like, hey, we can't work together. But I was like, I asked him like, is there anyone that you would name that you would throw out there that we could rally people behind? And he was like, maybe Carl. And I was like, I can't do that to Carl because he's the only person who I felt like had my back maybe in that moment. But then I jumped in another room and Carl actually relayed some information, which was really kind of the dagger, which was, hey, David actually has a full compass from Katie. So, and that was just like, what the hell? Where did that come from? Like, how did that happen? Like, I don't even know how that would have come about. And so I was like, all right, I'm screwed there. And then I was in a room with Joshua and Joshua then said, like, I was like, hey, David doesn't have it, but he was like, Joshua said, I want to get the advantages out of this game. And he knew I had half a compass at that point. And so I was like, he was like, you can use my half compass and save yourself. And I was like, that's super weird for you to say, but I was like, okay, if you're truly trying to eliminate the advantages from this game, and also I'd be indebted to you, like maybe that's a move you want to do. And I was like, great, let's do it right now. The mod's in here, let's take care of it. And he was like, no. And I was like, all right, he's just bullshitting me. honestly. I was like, I don't know what strategy that was, but it's just like, all right, if you're not willing to do it now, you're not going to do it later. And he's like, well, I have no confidence you're going to do it. And I was like, I don't know. I can't, there's nothing I can say that'll do you. I'm like, you have my word. I was like, I swore on my dog. I'm like, I'm not going to go back on that. That's gold.
Mhm.
Dog people know that. So, and at that point I was just like, all right, whatever. He's not going to do it. And I was like, is there anything I can do to try to like tell you something, like to try to like get you to trust me here? And I was like, and I told him David didn't have a vote. And then he's like, okay. He's like, well, then let's do it. I was like, all right, I don't believe you, but whatever. And then I ended up somehow in a room with him again. At this point, I didn't believe him. And he was like, hey, I'm gonna do it. And I was like, what, you're really? I was like, oh, all right. So like I didn't try to bring it up because I didn't trust him, but then he brought it up like, I'm gonna do it. And I was like, all right, well, I gotta roll the dice with that. So I went in and with the strategy of I hope David feels confident enough to not play it or doesn't feel comfortable playing Katie's idol and gives it back, or play her compass and gives it back. And so he had that moment where he was like, Katie, I really think I need it, which was unfortunate. But I went into it first and I pled my case, was hoping that, what I said and I tried to convey is like, I'm true to my word. And so I was trying to convey to Joshua, like, I'm going to do this if you do this. Like, I'm true to my word. I'm someone who's played this game pretty honestly. I'm someone who you guys can trust, you're going to want as an ally. I was just trying to pitch myself. Like I knew it was probably not going to work, but I was just pitching it. But at the same time, there was the glimmer of hope that Joshua was going to give me his half compass. And I didn't feel comfortable enough playing the Destiny token, because it's like, if I play the Destiny token, then we just wouldn't have enough numbers for David if he chooses to not use Katie's advantage. So I'm like, I can't risk my vote, because then it would, like, then we wouldn't have the numbers. So it's like, do I play my Destiny token 1 in 5 chance, flipping, like literally rolling the dice, or hope that one, David or Joshua gives me his half compass, or two, David gets too big of a conscience and doesn't want to take Katie's advantage, which I don't think she really knew what was going on at the time. And that's going to be a storyline, which I'm really excited to see that unfold, because that clearly has implications later in the game. And so he kind of protected his game. There's been some talk that, she definitely felt taken advantage of. So I'm excited to see that actually fully play out and get the full story, because a lot of it is he said, she said, where Katie was saying one thing, David was saying the other, but she truly didn't really understand the dynamics of like how to use the compass or what was going on. And Katie and I had bonded right before going into that. We had squashed any of our beef. We got to understand each other a lot more. And we both looked at each other like right before we went in. She was the last person I talked to. She goes, I'm not voting for you. I said, Katie, I'm not voting for you either. So like that for me was one of like a great moment in the game for me. It's like, hey, the one person who I felt like maybe we got off on the wrong foot, or we had a bad moment together, we clearly squashed that and have chatted plenty of times since. And so it was frustrating, because then I got into the point and Doc says, do anyone want to play their advantages? Before I can even say anything, Joshua like jumps up on the screen. I'm like, is he about to do this for me? And then he does this big like proclamation that he wasn't going to do it for me. And I was like, sweet. Like, thanks. I was like, and so for me, it was just that was the first time in the game I really felt like it like rubbed me the wrong way. And I'm sure I'll talk with Joshua and I'm sure I'll get his point of view and all of that. But in that moment, I was just kind of like, I feel like he made that really personal against me as opposed to gameplay, where if he would have said like, hey, I tricked you, like I was just trying to play the game here. But he was like, why would I do that to you? I'm gonna get you out. And I was like, whoa, dude, like you could have literally just said nothing and I would have been voted out. Like, or I could have said like, Joshua, do you want to do this? And you could have been like, sorry, man, not going to do it. But he kind of made like a show of it. And so for me, it was kind of like a victory lap on my grave, because he knew I was going out that. So for me, that just rubbed me the wrong way in the moment. And so I, in my confession, I was like, dude, what the hell? Like, you didn't need to do that. I was going home. Like, you knew I was going home at that point, but you like just were kind of arrogant about it. And so part of it's like, hey, it's a 20-year-old who's a massive Survivor person who just, it wasn't really a big move at all. It was just like, I think he thought it was like a big move that he was doing, but he was just like kind of being a dick in front of everybody. So I was like, so at that point, I tried to like crash his game a little bit. Because he did that to me and I was like, hey, like, just people, you can't trust this guy's word. Like, I know he was deceiving me, but like, he gave me his word for no reason on something where I didn't ask him to do anything for me. He went out of his way to try to highlight that he was doing something for me, which again, really wasn't like a strategy. Like I was like trying to find, like, there was like a strategy behind it. And I was like, no, he just kind of went on a power trip. And like, I think at that point I was like, maybe he just like didn't like me or something. And so I was like, you know what, whatever, like I'm out. Like he won't have my vote on the, like if he would have not said that, like I would definitely consider his vote for if he wins, or if he makes it to the end. And so now it's like, you didn't have to burn my bridge. You could have said like, hey, sorry, man, like this wasn't my plan. And I would have been like, good game, good play. But instead it was like, so that was weird.
Yeah, it definitely was a strange move on his part. I know we were all watching it like, what is this kid doing? Like, this is the first member of the jury. You're not getting this guy's vote if you make it to the end. And like you said, yeah, it wasn't a big move for him to get you out and not give you that. Like, you were clearly the obvious target. It would have been a bigger move if he helped save you and stuck with five guys and sent someone else home. Like, watching the whole merge day was interesting because I kind of looked at you, Mariana, and Bambi as three rogue agents that anyone on Team Janet could pick up. Like,
Yeah.
they were such a big group that they could use you guys. Like, there's not going to be an all team Kelly jury. So there's
No.
no reason to take you out right away. They're going to have to take each other out. So, like, David, especially, I thought it would be awesome to link up with you. You guys could be shields for each other.
Yeah. And part of that, like, I think I probably maybe tried to play like too hard. And like, I think just because right away I was like, hey, we have the numbers to get David out. He's already voted me out one time. He's not a part of Five Guys. He's not a part of original Kelly. Like, let's just get him out of here. And he also doesn't have a vote. And so I was like, that's an easy way for me to try to tell people like, hey, this guy doesn't have a vote. Let's get him out. And
Yeah.
so, but until I found out he had his compass, then like that changed. And then it was like, a 7-minute scramble. And I was like, oh shit. Then I had to try to trust Josh there because that's the only thing that I had. But I think Josh then went there and he's like, hey, we're voting Phil. I'm pretty sure he just went and did that and told, and I think that's probably how he got some of the people, which is fine. It's like, hey, Phil is voting David. David's going to play his compass. We're voting out Phil. And so like, I don't blame anybody else for voting me out. It was clearly the play at the time. It was the right move, but it didn't have to be. Kind of just played out how it is. So I'm glad that I really pleaded my case and I thought I did a decent job. And I thought that, Josh got exposed a little bit in the meantime as, kind of probably being like an emotional player, because clearly that decision was based on emotion. And then even at I think the first crossroads that I was at, Docs asked him like, why did you do that? And he said, he said something like, because I wanted to. Or like for show. And I was like, all right, well, maybe if you would have said like, even if that moment he would have been like, hey, I voted out Phil, thought it was going to be a good move, like kind of tricked him. Maybe I came across on the wrong foot. Like I didn't mean it personally. And I would have been like, no problem. But he's like, I did it for show. And I was like, what? I was like, what?
Not impressing the jury.
Yeah. I was like, what? Like, I'm like, for you talking like you're a genius strategy guy, that was like a strategy move that would have happened if you would have said nothing and you wouldn't have gotten flack for it. But now it happened and you caught flack for it. And like, I'm hoping some people, I mean, maybe because it's far down the road that some people won't remember it, but I'm hoping some people remember like, it's kind of a dick for no reason in that moment. And again, I had like zero bad interactions with Joshua previously. Like I was talking to him like about his family, about college, like birthday, like pretty normal stuff. And then, so it's like, it'd be different if like I had like gone against him and it like, but there was just nothing for me that just really surprised me. And I was just kind of like, so that just kind of, that left a little bit of a salty taste in my mouth for a couple of days. And, I've talked in the jury about it because I don't want him to win now. So it's like, I'm trying to influence some of the jury members right now too, which is, and part of the joy of being the first person in the jury is that as people come, like I can hopefully have some type of influence on them. And however far that goes, maybe not, but at that point in the game, I think it's smart if you're voting somebody out, especially the first member of the jury, to try to appease them because ultimately they're going to have a pretty significant influence on the rest of the game.
Oh, 100%. You don't want to upset the people that are going to be voting for you to be the winner at the end of this. So that's a nice power that you have now. And yeah, that comment's something that people don't forget. And I think other players were like very caught off guard by as well. Definitely not good jury etiquette.
That's good. That's good to hear that it wasn't, because also I was wondering, like, am I just perceiving this way? And so, especially when you don't go back and get to like debrief and talk with everybody. You're just kind of left and then you're gone. It's just kind of like, I mean, I was able to have a nice therapy session with Docs and in there. And so for me, it was good to kind of like talk through it. And Docs did a good job of, he was great afterwards. And, I wasn't like mad or anything, but I was just kind of like, it was more just like,
Just happens.
I was like, what the hell? I felt like I was like walking across the street and a youth just criticized me,
It definitely was strange, but you did a great job pitching your case and just trying to rally, knowing your name was on the line. Like, not knowing, you obviously didn't know David had a compass. So your strategy was great, going for David. Like, that's a big move to go
Yeah.
right after him, rally up his former teammates against him. Makes perfect sense. But obviously, wrench in the plan, surprise, he has a compass.
I think that's going to be the most fun storyline to watch happen. And
Definitely be interesting to see how this all plays out. But you fought the good fight. You did what you could with the information you had. We all would have loved to see you stick around longer, but we're
thank
so
you.
happy that we got to have you. You were a joy to have as a cast member. You were so fun to watch. We have a lot of fans on our staff. And thank you for playing.
Thank you guys for having me. I mean, I just, kind of did this on a whim. Obviously, I'm a big fan I'm a big fan of Survivor, and it's one of the reasons that I did the show. And it was really fun. And I got to meet a bunch of different people. I got to meet the mods, and like you do kind of get like a group of people you hang out with. And I felt like I had an opportunity to play the game. Some of my fears were I'd get in here, get out like episode 4 and just like not really make a splash. But I wanted a challenge for my team, had a couple like team wins. And so that was just really fun. And then even had to plead my case. I got voted out twice. And so, either means people really saw me as a threat or just didn't like me. And I hope it's because they saw me as a threat. So
Definitely. So now that you are the mayor of the jury, who are you rooting for to get to the end and win?
I mean, Carl, just because I want to hear his speech, honestly. I think Mike has a real good shot, but he's kind of been he's playing a good game, but he's playing in the middle a little bit. So he's playing, I got to see the rest, how it plays out with Mike. But honestly, at this point, I think he's in a really good position. He's been playing a very clean game and making a lot of moves without getting his hands dirty. And I really appreciate that. But I'm kind of rooting for the underdog. So I would love to see Bambi or Mariana win, because they've really they've been at the bottom of the numbers just like I was. And we were, kind of 3 against a lot. And so being against the numbers right away, I always root for the underdog. And so what I'm looking for is for them to stay in the game, and not just stay in the game because people want to take them to the end, but maybe stay in the game, maybe use that until there's like 6 or 7 people left, and then start making some moves, forming some alliances and win. Because, ultimately I empathize with them being clear, like always having to look over your shoulders. So I'm rooting for Bambi or Mariana. And my final pick is going to be Bambi, because then, Bambi had been upfront with me a lot. And she even told me when she voted, she's like, I voted for you, I'm sorry. And she was like, the numbers were not against you. And it didn't make sense for me to, and it's like, I appreciate that. Like, and I appreciate people who, when something like that happens, they didn't do it out of malice. They did it because it was a smart move in the game at the time. And they also are okay telling you that, because at the same time, like as a player in the game, like I understand that. So that was just, I'm rooting for Bambi all the way.
That's awesome. Kelly Strong. Let's hope for another underdog story.
Yes, please.
Well, thank you for sitting down with me today. It's been awesome having you on the show. I have one last question for you. If Expedition called to have you back on a second chance or an all-star season, would you play again?
I think I would, because I would come into it with a lot better, I feel like a lot better understanding of the game, but also I think with just enthusiasm, because this has been really fun. And so I don't think I'd come back as like a completely different person. I would try to come back and just have fun, and it'd be great if it's a second chance or an all-star to see some of the people again, and hopefully like find some people who maybe I couldn't work with and could work with. So there's some people who I think would be great to work with, like Haley or David, like just never on their sides, but I think they're good players. And so like some people who I never got to work with, it maybe would offer a chance to do that, which would just be really fun.
Yes, that's the answer we like to hear. And hopefully we will get to see you again in the future. This has been Back at the Ranch, and we will see everyone next episode.
Good night.